All right, welcome back to the Omni Wellness Studio. Got a special guest in the house for you today, Dr. Lindsey Bellcase, owner of Shift Therapy Wellness. How you doing today?
Doing great.
So I'm not even going to try to list off all your credentials.
Okay.
There's some that looks very elaborate, and I don't know what they stand for. So
all right.
Name them off.
All right. So first and foremost, Doctor of Physical Therapy. Next would be my geriatric clinical specialist. So a couple of years ago, I went and got board certified in geriatrics. And then CrossFit level 1 would be the next one. So I coach some CrossFit classes and have the CrossFit level 1.
That is so awesome. So you're like a hybrid.
Kind of, yeah.
So,
I'm a very active physical therapist.
Yeah. And on that, like, so you're not a rehab like place. You're not a chiropractor. So tell us a little bit about how shift therapy is different from other places.
Perfect. So kind of going back to that geriatric clinical specialist, when we started Shift, our focus was very much on longevity. So I wanted to learn a little bit more about the aging adult because so I'm 39. I'm not sure how old you are, Keith.
In October, I'll be 39.
Okay. Same age. So we're older adults in the making. So our focus is on longevity. So what does it take to get people moving and keep them moving even until they're 90? So that's kind of what makes us different at Shift.
That's awesome. And you work with all ages?
All ages. Mm-hmm. Teenagers up to 90s somethings.
That's awesome. So is this something you knew you wanted to do from a young age? You've kind of just had your eyes set on this vision for a long time. How did you fall into this career path?
So I thought I wanted to be an athletic trainer. I was involved in swimming, loved sports as a kid. Then I went to Mississippi State for college, and I was a student athletic trainer, and I learned I did not want to be an athletic trainer.
What were some of the reasons you didn't want to be?
You have to be there at 4 a.m. a lot.
Really?
Lots of 4 a.m., lots of traveling on the weekends. So I went to all the SEC football stadiums, got to do a lot of really cool things, but I knew that wasn't something that would let you have a family.
So they work out at 4 in the morning?
Sometimes. Well, we'd have to be there early to get ice baths ready, get all the Gatorade ready, get all the tape ready, be prepared for when they got there.
So speaking of, that's like a trendy thing right now, the cold plunge stuff. So they've been doing that for years, right? In the sports world. That's so cool.
Especially with 2-a-days for football. They had to cool off pretty quickly.
That's cool.
Yeah. So did that and then realized that wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. So I started pursuing physical therapy. When I came out of physical therapy school, I worked in a hospital, which was a great experience. I got to learn a lot about all the really bad things that can happen to people. It was not what I thought I was going to do. So I thought I'd be in sports medicine. And in a roundabout way, I've kind of brought myself back there with this new approach that we're using at Shift.
What was some of the bad things that could happen in a hospital? Like, what do you mean? Like somebody coming in with like a broken knee or leg
car
from a car accident?
Strokes, diabetes, getting their leg cut off.
Wow.
Yeah, lots of real bad things, like people's life getting turned upside down.
And you would help them like rehab from that, like learn to walk again and stuff like that?
Yeah, lots of gait training is what we call it, learning to walk. Yep.
How long did you get to experience that?
I think I was there 3 or 4 years.
That's a lot.
Mm-hmm. Taking people from bedbound in the ICU to up and walk in the halls.
So that had to be pretty rewarding.
Very rewarding.
To watch that process.
Very rewarding, but it also started me noticing the chronic disease issue that we have, and that's over time it became much more evident that was really the problem. It wasn't so much, obviously a stroke is a problem, but it starts well before you have that stroke.
Right.
So chronic disease is really the big issue, and that's also a lot of what led us to start Shift. So my husband's an occupational therapist, and we were both working in home health. So we were seeing people that were homebound, and we were like, man, this is just too late. Like, they're already so far gone. They have these terrible issues, and we're helping them, but we could help them so much more if we saw them 10 years earlier.
Yeah.
And we started talking about those lifestyle modifications, got them active, and that's what made us start Shift. Yeah,
because like you're right. There's a difference between somebody having like a car accident that they couldn't help that,
right? Versus
somebody that could have made better decisions.
For sure, but even that person that had a car accident. So let's say like retirement savings is a good way to think about it. Our retirement investor always reminds me of that. He's like, that's what you do all day. So we're trying to build that hedge. So trying to get as strong as you can be, as resilient as you can be, so that when you have that car accident, it's not a big deal.
Gotcha. So you're saying like somebody like me, for example, that's been working out for 20 something years, if I had a car accident, there's a higher likelihood that I could recover faster versus
100%.
somebody that was overweight or sedentary.
100%. Yeah, they are met with many more hurdles than you would be.
And I've never even thought about it from that angle. You know, like nobody ever really wakes up thinking, "Hey, I'm working out to prevent or to heal up better."
I'm preparing for that car accident.
But that's another benefit.
100%.
Another benefit.
To me, that's probably the biggest benefit.
Yeah.
It's like you don't know what's going to happen to you, but what can you do to be prepared for it? How can you save for that retirement?
Right. And when you say chronic disease, what is your definition of chronic disease? What does that even mean?
So chronic diseases are a lot of the preventable diseases. So diabetes, obesity, hypertension, high cholesterol.
That most of the time can be prevented.
Yeah. Lifestyle diseases is another way to describe that.
Do you feel like America as a whole is under a situation where there's a lot of that going on?
Yes. One of my PT mentors, he uses this analogy. He says Americans aren't dying of mechanical shoulder pain. They're dying of heart disease. So people will say, well, I don't want to lift weights because I don't want to have shoulder injury, or it's bad for your knees. What's bad for you is heart disease. So exercise is not what's killing America. It's chronic diseases.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yes, it does make sense. And
I love that analogy.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be worried about working out bad for your shoulders and knees. I'd be worried about being 100 pounds overweight. It's not 100%. Too good for your, bone joints either. Yes, yeah. So
there's definitely a mindset shift when you think about it that way, but that's the truth.
So I forgot to ask you a while ago, back when you were working in the hospitals with these people that had these life-changing accidents, I feel for them. Did you see a lot of people, I guess their mindset was challenged,
for sure.
A person that was just used to getting up and going about their normal day, all of a sudden now has having to learn to walk again.
Right.
How important do you think mindset was on that for somebody?
Huge. Mindset and a support system, so people who had that support around them to help them and encourage them and help them on their journey versus those that were kind of isolated and didn't have support, it was a lot harder.
Because I couldn't imagine. I mean, I would like to think that I could turn the switch on and push through it and just say, "Hey, this is the new me for a while. This is my challenge. This is what I got to work with." But I could see where on the other side of the coin, it would be very easy to be like depressed and
and there's that natural cycle you go through with any kind of thing like a death or a grieving. That denial, bargaining, anger. Yeah, everybody goes through that, and something like an injury goes through the same process.
But to be able to work with somebody and time and time again and help them go through that pain and then finally have a breakthrough, where they can take a step or stand up without assistance, that's got to be so rewarding.
It is, yeah.
Well, cool. So how does it work with your business? Like, if somebody's dealing with a certain ailment, what do y'all look at first? Is there like a consultation, or how does that work?
We offer a couple different things. So usually the first thing is that initial consultation. So coming in, so we've got physical therapists, myself and Clint, and then occupational therapy, my husband, Darren. And so initially we're looking at, what's the problem? What's your root cause? What's going on? What do we think is the thing we should tackle first? And then also, what's your why? We were talking about this a little bit earlier. You've got to have a reason. We don't want you to be just coming in because the doctor said so. Like, what is your why? Do you want to be able to get on the floor and play with your grandkids? Do you want to be able to run a half marathon? What's motivating you to say this knee pain is an issue now, whereas maybe before it wasn't? So that's what that first initial consult is, and then coming up with a plan to tackle it together. And
I should know the answer to that because I was a patient.
Yes.
Is that what you call us?
Yeah. Okay. Client patient. Interchangeable.
But I want to get your description of it. So yeah.
Would you say that fits how it went with you?
For sure. So awesome. I was dealing with some shoulder issues last year and had the opportunity to go work with you, and right off the bat you had filmed me, video me
doing certain exercises,
and I didn't realize that I was lacking mobility in certain areas or having like a one side was favoring the other until you play it back. That was a pretty awesome eye opener for me, was actually seeing myself, in your mind, you think you're just doing this movement and everything's cool. But when you watch it back and see, hey, your right side is coming a little bit down further than the other side or whatever, it's like, oh, holy crap, there's a little bit of an imbalance there.
Right. Taking that critical, step back view helps a lot.
Yeah, for sure. So, long story short, you gave me some exercises to do, and I'm still working through it, but it's much better than it was.
That's awesome. So you're going to get that muscle up one day.
Yes, I am. It's just a matter of, honestly, I got one of the best in the area inviting me to come work out with him, and I just got to do it.
That's right.
Sunday mornings. So I've been out of town a lot lately because my girlfriend don't stop winning shows. So as soon as she stops winning,
she's got another one soon, right?
Yes, July the 15th.
Okay,
and that's going to be it.
Okay.
So regardless of what happens, she's going to take a break, and hopefully my weekends will be back to normal, and I can go plug in with Hamza.
Awesome.
Over at CrossFit Rome, and truly I want to start tackling that because I'm tired of that being a goal, and they just keep kind of pushing it to the side. I know I can do it.
You can do it for sure.
So that's cool. So what do you, in your opinion, what do you think is more important? For somebody if they're going to focus on something, weightlifting, cardio, stretching, or everything. I mean, is it all?
It depends on the person, but I would say if you caught me in an elevator and you were like, we got 20 seconds to talk about it, I'm going to say strength training. 100%.
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
Yep. So the more muscle mass you can have, the better your, that longevity I'm talking about. I want to think about, what do I want to do when I'm 90? And what do I need to do today to be able to do that? That's kind of the thought process I have. So muscle mass is going to be the key. So resistance training is hands down the most bang for your buck as far as exercise for a longevity purpose.
And how would a resistance training program differ from a person in their 30s versus somebody in their 60s or 70s, or would it? I mean, because
it really wouldn't. Greg Glassman, the founder of CrossFit, has a saying, let me see if I don't butcher this, the needs of our Olympic athletes and our grandparents differ by degree, not kind. So we all need to be able to squat. We all need to be able to deadlift. We all need to be able to push.
Yeah.
So those are kind of those focused foundational movements that everybody needs to do in everyday life. You got to be able to pick up stuff from the ground. You got to be able to get off the toilet.
Right.
You got to be able to push yourself up off the floor. So if you can do all those three things, now it might be we're working with 5 pounds for the 80-year-old and we're working with 300 for the 30-year-old.
Yeah.
But it's the same idea, the same
concept.
Some
may use barbells, some may use dumbbells, some may use kettlebells.
Right.
But it's still them compound movements. And the same thing with in my world, a lot of people think there's some kind of special female workouts or special male workouts. Yeah. I'm like, no, we all need to deadlift and squat and do some form of pressing.
100%. So, if you're a human, you need to be able to do those things to live your life.
Yeah. So
the degree changes over time, but it's the same idea. We all move the same way.
Right. So what's some of the, I guess, possibilities?
Can I say one more thing about that? Sorry.
Yeah.
So as we get older, there's a natural thing that happens. It's called sarcopenia. It's the age-related loss of muscle mass, and that's going to happen to every single one of us, no matter what we do. So the game we're playing is, how do we hold all that? How do we keep it? And you can actually gain muscle as you get older. I think you've seen this.
Yeah.
You can be 50 and have this amount of muscle and then do strength training, and you can get more. So then you're basically reversing age.
Yes. And that's,
you're taking age and flipping it on its head.
It's funny you say that, because the scan machine that we have at the nutrition shop shows your bio age.
Okay.
And I see so many people on up in age reverse their internal age because their visceral fat levels get lower, their skeletal muscle mass gets higher, their body fat reduces, and they're actually turning back the clock internally.
Exactly. And what it's not showing is they're also increasing their bone density, which is really, really cool.
Yep. And so as somebody gets older, what's some of the things that you see a lot of times that happens because they didn't have the muscle mass? Like, it could be, I got a feeling I know what you're going to say. It could be, it's probably what you hear a lot is somebody falling in the bathroom, or when they go to pick up just something simple like in the yard, they bust their back or lose their balance.
We actually have somebody coming in this week that her light bulb moment was she fell and she couldn't get off the floor. She had to call 911. She's like, I got to do something. That's usually, it's not too late at that point, but man, if we could have gotten to it a little sooner.
And this is, I'm assuming this can happen to even people that's not overweight.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's also something we deal with called frailty, which is when people don't have enough muscle mass to basically survive. So their muscle mass is so low, but they're thin. We can measure that with grip strength. So if their grip strength is not normal, we also measure something called a 30-second sit to stand. So how many times they can stand up and sit down without using their hands. And some people can't even do that. They need to use their hands. And we can compare that to other people their age and see if they're considered frail. If they are considered frail, they're more likely to be hospitalized, more likely to need assistance, and more likely to have a serious injury.
And it's due to just having a very sedentary lifestyle. Like they might not be particularly lazy.
Not always. There's a lot of women, especially in that like 70 to 90-year-old age range right now, that the culture when they were younger was to be thin and as small as possible. So they didn't eat a lot. They had those low-fat diets. They definitely weren't doing strength training. They just wanted to be small. Yeah. So now they're 70 and 80, and they don't have any muscle mass.
Man, I never.
But they've been pretty active. You know, they probably walked a lot. They probably did a lot of cardio. But they didn't have that muscle reserve. So as they aged and time went on, they were losing muscle. And then now they don't have the muscle they need to be independent.
So this may be something you never thought about. I always like to take myself back in time. You know, like when I'm talking to clients about nutrition, if they're ever wanting to know what I consider to be like real food, I always tell them to think about, ask themselves, was that food around 1,000 years ago? You know, I call them Jesus foods. So, you know, if you couldn't get it 1,000 years ago, then it's probably not the best choice as far as being labeled as a real whole food.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And I try to encourage people to have like 75, 80% real foods in their diet, and the other 20% can be more convenience, modern, fun foods. Because I do realize it's hard we can't, as much as I would love for everybody to eat from their garden and eat nothing but organic whole foods, is hard.
Right.
And I'd rather a person have some balance in their life versus being so extreme in one direction to where it's not sustainable or so overwhelming they just back out.
Right, that all or none.
Yeah. So same thing in your world. You know, what do you think people were doing? Talk like 1,000 years ago. You know, what was the? Have you ever looked up the history of like what people's bone density was like, or
that'd be interesting
stuff like that thousands of years ago? Do you?
I mean, I know they were.
You imagine people were
pushing things, picking
there
things
you go.
up,
That's what I was going to ask.
Carrying things.
Do you think people were not really? They were strength training. I know they wouldn't go into a Gold's Gym back then,
but their life. You know, we have
the lifestyle,
a life that doesn't require us to do that anymore. We have to seek it out.
And you're right. Yeah.
Back then, their life required it.
My grandmother, so we might not even have to go back 1,000 years ago.
No, I don't think so.
My grandmother's in her 80s, and she's got stories where, you know, picking cotton in heavy bags, picking them up and putting them over her shoulder and walking through fields.
Okay.
So that's kind of like a form of doing like lunges, weighted lunges.
Yeah, or rucking.
Rucking, yes. And, you know, her brothers would always have to help their mom take the big wash bucket with water and take it out to the fire for their mom to wash clothes. And so, yeah, I see what you're saying. Like it was just organically, you were strength training,
right? You
know, back in the day, Little House on the Prairie days. Yeah, because you see them working hard.
Oh yeah. So
we're just in a time now where.
Does she still have that mindset? Is she a pretty hard worker?
No, unfortunately, when she was in her 30s, rheumatoid arthritis took over her life. So she was a loan officer at a bank in Rome. Moving on up, she probably would have eventually been like the president.
Okay.
And she played the heck out of a piano for church.
Oh wow!
And by the time she was 36 years old, she couldn't even pick up a gallon of milk. Ugh. So
that's awful.
Basically, since her 40s, mid 40s, my grandfather's been having to help her do a lot of basic stuff. Yeah. And she'll tell you now that if that same thing would have happened to her now, medical technology has advanced so much where it wouldn't have been as bad, you know. But unfortunately, when she got it, the medicine wasn't there.
Yeah, they couldn't slow it down.
No, so they're incorporating some of that now, but the damage is already done.
Yep.
You know, so it's very emotional for me because I see her life. You know, you can build up resentment when you think about it. Like, why her? You know, like she had such a gift of. She can't even play piano anymore. You know, for the church. I'm like, you can sit here and pick it apart and ask questions and wonder why all day long, but I don't know. Well, there's a greater somewhere in there.
There you go. Yep.
So,
Something along the way happened because of it.
But I will say, to give her a little bit more praise, she's been the most positive person. Like, she never complains. She'd rather ask you how you're doing and, be concerned about you versus, she's never been woe is me.
That's awesome.
She still, even now, will, if I call her and ask her what she's been up to, she'll say she's been doing some laundry. Mm-hmm. She might have to use contractions like little sticks,
grabbers and
stuff, but she still feels like she's got a routine and she's contributing, and she is.
That's huge. I mean, having a purpose.
That mindset, yeah.
And that mindset she developed probably when she was working hard has kept her going.
Yep. So strength training would be the number one thing.
Number one, for sure.
And it's the same thing in my world. I mean, and even now, after talking to you, I'm sure after this episode, I'm probably going to lean more into just the longevity of it. I mean,
for sure.
Just not only from a body recomp, aesthetic kind of goal,
right,
but just longevity in general, bone density.
Yep.
So yeah, that's awesome.
So those things are going to happen. Like naturally, our bones are going to get a little less dense. We're going to lose muscle mass.
Yeah.
But man, as high as we can build that hedge, as much as we can have in reserve, the effects of that loss is going to be way less severe when we're 80.
Yeah. And you got clients that start weight training for the first time in their life in their late in age.
Yeah, we have a lady, I always get it wrong because she never seems as old as she is, but she's 82 and she started with us when she was 79.
Really?
Yeah, she can jump rope. She runs circles around people. She's always been a go-getter, but she started. So we also have a group class. So aside from shift, we run the master's program at CrossFit Rome. So it's for 55 and up, doing weight training essentially with some intensity and some intervals. She started when she was 79.
That's amazing.
First exercise she's ever done in her whole life.
And now she's jump roping.
Uh-huh.
And what was her goal?
She can do burpees too, so she can get up and down off the floor independently. To keep her independence, to stay feisty.
Wow.
She's a single lady and she's not going to let anybody mess with her. And if you saw her, you'd say, yeah, I'm not going to mess with her.
Yeah, that's awesome. So she
can run. So one thing we do a lot is work on getting up and down off the floor because that's such an essential life skill. And we'll modify that. So sometimes we'll use like this table would be like a box. So we're kind of like bringing the floor up to them. But she can get all the way down on the floor and all the way back up without having to use anything to help her.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Because I've been in your place and it's almost like a miniature gym. You got like a gym there.
Yep.
And you got the weights and the kettlebells and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's definitely a non-traditional physical therapy clinic.
Right. And
that class we do run inside of CrossFit Rome. So we just kind of walk down the hall a little bit and do our group fitness class. And
for the listeners that live locally, where are you located?
So we're on East First Avenue, 314. Our entrance is on the corner of 1st and 4th Street.
Yep. You're on the
I say the backside of CrossFit Rome.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's such a nice place now. You just recently remodeled
September
that area.
We moved into the remodeled area. So now we have air conditioning, which is really nice.
You didn't have it before?
Yeah. Living through this summer, I'm like, oh man, this is wonderful.
Well, cool.
It's been a big blessing.
Yeah.
We have CrossFit Rome to thank for that. They've been a big support.
That's awesome. And CrossFit Rome they got a really good thing going too. It seems like they got a lot of people.
Rebranded to Rome Strength and Fitness now, and they have CrossFit Rome and X4 under the same roof. And then we're kind of on the corner of everything they have going on there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What do you know about muscular imbalances? What I know.
Yeah, so it's a natural phenomenon. We all have them. We're not, like our legs are not the same length. Everybody's got a little bit of a leg length discrepancy. A lot of people have some type of little bit of a curve in their spine. Like we're not perfectly symmetrical humans.
Just even from the get-go.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, even at birth, we're not perfect when we come out. We're amazing, but we're not perfectly symmetrical. But the things we do over time, like I'm sitting here, I think I always tend to cross I usually do this actually. I always cross my right leg over my left leg. So that's going to create some asymmetry in how I move. And that's perfectly normal. It's if I start having back pain and I'm looking at that and I'm like, okay, so if I measure how much my hip rotates in both directions, is there a big difference from side to side? When I do that, does that recreate that back pain? Well, maybe that situation where I do this all the time is something I need to be looking at and adjusting.
True.
Does that kind of answer what you're saying?
And I got a personal story. I messed myself up bad for a while. I don't know why I thought it was a good idea, but I used to carry a really thick wallet.
Oh, I remember you telling me this.
And I did a lot of driving for a living at the time, and I sat on my wallet. And why? Like, I look back and I'm thinking, why did I even do that? Like, that was not comfortable. You know, like, did I not ever think about just taking it out or putting it in my front pocket?
Right.
Like, I started doing that, you know, after I started having pain. But yeah, did that for so many years, it shifted my pelvis.
Like you probably have like a pelvic obliquity is what we call it.
And that started causing like a piriformis syndrome. And basically there's a sciatic nerve that runs through my piriformis muscle, and my muscle would get tight and cause pain all down my leg.
Yep.
And I have memories of, I used to work for you've heard of Monster Energy Drink.
Oh yeah.
I used to work for that company and deliver.
I didn't know that.
And I had a van that had all the graphics on it. And sometimes the van would not have a lot of drinks in the back. My pain would be so bad before I could even get out and take like a hand truck load of drinks inside the place. I would have to close myself up in the back of that van and lay on the floor and do stretches.
That's pretty bad.
So I could even like resume my day. And I did that for just self massaging. I did like everywhere I went, I was like sitting on tennis balls and
driving around with the lacrosse ball.
Yeah, I did that for like years. And then finally, knock on wood, I think after years of kind of like working on that and doing some self-massaging and stuff like that, and I think I did go see some people, you know, like yourself, like rehab places too, but in conjunction with everything, I finally got it healed. Like
That's awesome.
It hardly ever flares up anymore. So
a lot of chronic like musculoskeletal pains like that are just the things we're doing in everyday life. Like if we're all sitting at a computer all the time, it's not that this is necessarily a bad posture, but it is if you sit there for 2 hours straight and you don't ever move.
That's terrible. Yeah. Especially, I often wonder, and of course adults are bad too, you know, I mean, I find myself, you know, looking at my phone, my head down, and just, you know, younger generation for sure.
Yep.
You know, they're just riding around in their cars with their head down, thinking, what's that going to be like in a few years with everybody's neck? You know,
what I tell people who have a desk job is to do movement snacks. So set your timer on your phone for every 30 to 45 minutes and get up. You don't have to move a ton, just move a little bit, change your position. It's just that static where you're just like sitting on that tissue. If you held your finger like this for 10 minutes, it's going to start to hurt.
Yeah.
So if you sit like this for 10 minutes, your back's going to start to hurt. But if you just move around a little bit,
I like that.
Usually it's better.
Movement snacks. I like that because
there's actually some research behind that. And I'm terrible about citing research, but it was, I think 1 minute every hour they had people stand up and just like march in place, and they lost weight.
It's crazy.
Just from that little bit of
and
movement snack.
I've never called it that, but I have clients that do a lot of sitting and even driving, and I tell them also like every hour or two set an alarm, and just even if you like try to park somewhere and go for like a 5 or 10 minute walk, you know, or if you have an office job, just get up and go walk around the office or the block. Of course, sometimes it's hard to do it this time of year because if whatever
super hot
profession they're in, they don't want to come back all sweaty,
right?
You know, so I get that. But
I mean, even just like reaching up to the ceiling and bending over and touching their toes 5 times is going to get some. What it does, it gets fluid moving through your joints, so they don't just get stagnant, and it helps to reduce inflammation.
That's true. What kind of you know, advice would you give or tips would you give somebody that's listening that has maybe some what they consider what do you call it, acute pain right now?
Yeah.
Just is that something you feel like they need to go ahead and get looked at? And they, or, you know, what's your feeling? Is it they can just get on YouTube and do some stretches at home, or how does that usually play out for people?
Mean, it depends on the person. You know, everybody responds to different methods of treatments. If you have acute pain, that means it's like severe, 7 or 8 out of 10. It's affecting your everyday life. Yeah, you need to get some help. That you don't want to live like that for 2-3 weeks, and then it becomes a chronic issue where maybe it comes down to a 4 out of 10, but you're dealing with it all the time. So some advice from physical therapists. Sometimes people are like, oh yeah, y'all rehab total knees, right? Like you do total knee replacements. We're movement specialists. So if you have an issue with movement, a physical therapist is the person to help you with that.
Gotcha.
And we have direct access, so people can come see physical therapists without having to go to the doctor. You don't have to go see the orthopedist. Orthopedists are great. They're great at treating acute injuries, giving you advice. But if it's not something that's surgical or needs an injection, they're going to send you to physical therapy. So sometimes it's better just start with physical therapy, see if we can get that pain down. Usually within 6 visits, we can get you feeling better. The real fun starts after that. So it's easy to get somebody to feel better. What gets to be a little more challenging is how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? So that's where we're working on strength, mobility, flexibility, and empowering you to be able to manage that. So it's natural to have, like, if you're a human, you're going to have aches and pains.
Yes.
But if all you do is sit on the couch, you're going to have a lot of aches and pains. It's normal. It's part of life. But having those tools to know how to manage it is a lot of what we're doing too.
Is there a more common issue you see that comes in your place? Is it back pain? Is it shoulder?
That's a good question.
If you had to group them in certain, hey, this is the most, this is the first, this is the second, is there?
Probably different for each of us. So we all kind of have our own things we work on. Darren is an occupational therapist. He does a lot with that frailer, older adult. So those people that are saying, I notice I've been falling, or I can't get off the floor and I want to be independent. I don't want my kids to have to take care of me. That's Darren's niche. He's going to get them stronger, get them better balance. For me, I'm working with a little bit more of a fitness athlete kind of person. So a little bit younger, maybe has some performance goals, but has this pain that's holding them back. And then Clint is a little more general orthopedic. He sees a lot of shoulder pain, back pain, knee pain, hip pain.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And then,
but all from the lens of we want to get people moving. So if they're not moving, some type of exercise is going to be part of what we do, because we know number one is we need 150 minutes of moderate activity. That's going to help with almost any pain that you have. So that's for everybody.
150 minutes a week. Of just some kind of
moderate intensity. So like a 4 to 6 on a 0 to 10 scale, something that gets you breathing a little bit, gets your heart rate up. It's going to help move fluid through your body and help kind of flush inflammation.
That don't necessarily mean strength training. That's
not
just
necessarily
movement.
Just movement.
How many? What's the minimum days per week, and what duration do you think a human would get benefits from some type of strength training?
So the research evidence is at least 2 days per week, at least 30 minutes. I think is what it says. I don't know for sure. Mm-hmm.
Would be minimum.
Minimum.
If somebody could do that. That would, if you could just start doing that as a human, you're gonna
feel a whole lot better.
Boost yourself way ahead than the norm.
Correct.
The rest of the population.
Yep.
Wow, and that's just.
I feel like there was something else I was going to say there, but I lost it.
I'm probably because I interrupted you. Sorry.
That's okay. What was it? Man, so everybody's getting that exercise.
Yep.
And then it'll come back to me in a minute.
Yeah. Well, where can people find you? Social media world.
So shift_therapy_wellness on Instagram. Just search Shift Therapy and Wellness on Facebook. Our website is shift.physio, which is PHYSIO. And it just got updated. Ellie Baromeo does an amazing job. She just got it all updated. We're really excited about it.
That's the website person?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, she's great.
I have to.
She's local.
Get her information.
She did all of our branding, design work.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. She's like independent. She don't work for a company. She
Correct.
just does it by herself. That's cool. Mm-hmm. Need to get her information.
Yeah, shout out to Ellie.
Yes. Well, cool. Any other advice or tips you would give somebody that's sedentary right now listening?
Yeah, so kind of in that same vein, like if there was, so I said strength training is like the one thing that can be intimidating for some people. So that's part of what we're trying to help people do is say, I've got knee pain and I want to work out, but every time I work out, I make it worse. So how do I have this knee pain and still exercise, still meet those guidelines? So that's something that we like to do. But everybody in general, it's the 10,000 steps a day. We just all need to move more.
Yeah,
we need to turn on that tracker and just move. I think we tend to overcomplicate it. So I've said some words like we need to do strength training. We need to do this many minutes of moderate activity. But if you're only getting 2,000 steps a day, you just need to move a little bit more and try to get 8,000 to 10,000 steps a day.
I just touched on this recently.
Oh, really?
I basically said, if you go crush a workout in the morning, but then you sit on your butt the rest of the day, that's not too good. So I encourage people to start tracking their movement, because I found myself in that same situation that my line of work changed. I went from a more physical labor type job where I was getting more movement in per day to more of an office type setting. And I found myself it was weird because I've always been in shape and I've always been like active, but I found myself not feeling too active.
Right.
And I'm like, what happened? And I started tracking my steps, and yes, I would go get that check mark on the box in the mornings for my hour and a half weight training session, but then I would only get like 4,000 steps in for the day.
I was the same way.
And I was like, okay, this is probably not too good.
Yeah, my eyes were open to that recently. I'm reading a book called Built to Move. So there's a physical therapist, Kelly Starrett. He's kind of who transformed my perspective of physical therapy and made me realize what I was doing before wasn't very good physical therapy. And I became a much better physical therapist, but his new book is called Built to Move, and it's a very hands-on, easy read. But the chapter about steps, I was like, I haven't ever really paid attention to that. For me, I exercise 4 to 6 times a week.
Yeah.
And I started looking at it, and I was like, my job had changed too. So now I'm in a little bit more of a managerial role, training people, and I've been on the computer a lot. And I was only getting 6,000 steps a day. So now you better believe I'm way behind today. I'm only at 2,000, so I got some work to do.
Yeah. So same here. So I remember my first goal for me personally, and it's a lot of my first goals for the people that I work with, because a lot of the people I work with, they don't do anything. Mm-hmm. Like, it's seriously, they wake up, walk to their car, park in their work parking lot, go sit on a desk all day.
Yep.
Only the steps they're getting in is from like their vehicle to the place they're going. Like, some of them's only getting in 2,000 or 3,000 steps.
Yep.
So my first milestone for them is 7K.
That's perfect.
Minimum. Like, if you're a human and you're able to like walk and you don't like, you don't have any major health or pain, 7K needs to be, if you're breathing and you're a human on this earth, 7K is like the absolute minimum, but shoot for 10.
For sure.
We're going to for sure get them to 10 later on. So I remember setting that goal for myself. I was like, I got to get to 7K. And then I remember going to 10. Now 10 is the absolute minimum.
Okay.
But I remember, even 10 was like, okay, I'm going to have to like reverse this. Like, it's going to require me to get up like maybe during lunch and go for a 10 or 15 minute walk.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be long at all.
No.
Darren did this with somebody recently. He was trying to, he'd be able to tell you the numbers, but he counted how many steps they could do in a minute. And it was basically if they, I'm going to be terrible at quoting this, but
it's probably 100.
It was 100 steps in a minute. So if they just did it, 1 minute every 10 minutes?
Yes.
They could easily get to 10,000. And that's a really achievable way. So if you do have pain, doing it all at once is really hard.
Yep.
It's a lot of load on that tissue. But if you break it into those movement snacks, that little bit, and you just do it frequently, you'd be surprised what you can accomplish.
So I try to go for a 10-minute walk every hour.
So that gives you 1,000 every hour.
1,000 every hour.
Yep.
And then sometimes my Apple Watch will tell me that I've got like 15,000 steps a day, because of the elliptical that I do.
Oh,
yeah. Steps also. Sometimes a 30-minute elliptical session will give me 3,000 steps.
Okay.
I don't count those sometimes. I still try to get in the
10K on top of that.
10K, yeah, with the actual steps.
That book that I'm talking about, Built to Move, they have a trailer for the book. I'll have to send it to you, but it basically depicts what you're saying. So this woman gets up, makes her coffee, gets on the subway, goes to work, sits, goes to the bathroom, goes home, take out food, goes to bed.
Yeah.
And she's got back pain and she's got knee pain and all those things that come along with that kind of lifestyle.
I mean, that sedentary of a life combined with a bad diet is a recipe for some bad stuff to happen.
Right.
I mean, that's just, you're creating the perfect storm environment
100%.
for disease and stuff to take place. And that's why I'm real big on tracking people's visceral fat, levels, because, I've seen some people, their subcutaneous fat not be off the charts, and they'll be like, okay, see, I'm good. I'm like, well, your visceral fat is like
not great,
through the roof,
and
that's the fat that's deeper inside around your organs, and that
it's linked to more
more
heart disease issues.
That is where a lot of disease stems from later on. So I try to give them a goal to get that down also.
Right. Like the person with the belly, but you can see their abs.
Right.
It's all underneath there.
Yeah. So
it's more common in men than women.
Yeah. Because I always pick on like this imaginary person I have in my mind that think about a really skinny guy that smokes a pack a day.
Oh yeah.
He's kind of ripped. He's naturally thin. He's probably even got abs, but he smokes a pack a day. He eats fast food, does a little bit of drinking.
Yep.
His visceral fat is through the roof.
Yep.
And there's a good chance that guy is probably going to come down with some kind of disease in his 30s, late 30s, early 40s.
And probably not know it because he probably doesn't go to the doctor.
Right. So
Probably doesn't get any lab work done.
Yeah, that's the visceral fat part of it. Like,
Yeah.
he may look thin, but internally he's really overweight.
Right.
Out of
That's
shape.
where the scale doesn't tell you the whole picture
Nope.
at all.
Nope.
That's another thing I wish people knew.
The scale makes my job a lot harder.
Yes.
The normal bathroom scale.
Yep.
Literally had a girl recently almost throw in the towel. She actually ghosted on me for a couple of weeks, even though she had just been in a week before, and the scan results showed her putting on lean muscle mass.
Okay.
And body fat was dropping.
Yep.
She freaked out because the scale went back up 1 pound in her bathroom, and she shut down.
Yep.
She shut down. I think went and binged, ate, and just ghosted on me for 2 weeks.
It's awful. It's
Her
sad.
husband was reaching out to me, and but anyway, I feel for it. I hate that.
It's just that's such a deeply ingrained thing. You know, what does the number on the scale say? And there's a lot of personal meaning attached to that.
Yeah,
But it's displaced.
I get it, though.
It's not
I mean,
accurate.
You're so used to the psychological piece of being attached to that number on that
certain
scale.
number.
I understand.
It's a hard mindset shift.
I just wish people wouldn't put so much focus on it.
I agree.
It's so disheartening. But she's back in the game now.
Awesome.
Yeah, she's back, and I think she's got another scan soon. So
I remind myself, the more muscle you have, the more cookies you can eat. So
there you go. I always tell people a side effect of putting on muscle is a revved up metabolism and fat loss and all that stuff. So she'll probably end up listening to this episode. So
I hope so.
Anyways, well, anything else you want to add to this episode today, Lindsey?
Just a little bit, another thing about us. So we do a free aging screening. So some of the stuff we've talked about, we screen that once a month, the third Wednesday of every month from 2:30 to 3:30. You can find info about that on our social media, but that's every month and it's free. If you're curious about some of the stuff we talked about, that's a great time to come get it checked out. We offer a free class for our group fitness class too, if anybody wants to come check that out. Yeah, we're just really grateful for the support. So you and Spartan Smoothies and Allie have been super supportive of us, and we try to make that likewise. It's a great friendship and relationship, and anything that gets people moving and gets them talking about health and wellness is huge to us.
Yeah, and I know your passion is the same. I see so many people just kind of suffering through life.
Yep.
And I just want to shake them and be like, it can be better than this.
Right. I think people don't realize how much control that we do have over our aches and pains and life and mindset, but it's hard to get out of that cycle.
And I think they've been feeling like crap for so long.
Right.
That
it
they
becomes
think that's
normal.
the norm.
And it's not. It's 100% not normal.
No. I'm like, if you just had a dose of what things could be like,
right,
you'd be like, sign me up.
Yep.
Like, this is not normal. Like, feeling like you do, whether it's
and it doesn't take long.
Yeah.
Like, from our experience, 2 to 4 weeks of some guided coaching, addressing some lifestyle things, addressing movement patterns, and people are usually feeling a heck of a lot better.
Yeah, life's too short.
That's just like the beginning,
Yeah, life's too short just to suffer through it, or suffer by. I mean,
it doesn't get easier over time. Like, it's take control of it now so that it isn't worse later.
And that's what I tell people that too. If you're in your, what do you say, 40s, and you're at a crossroads, 30 or 40s, you're at a point in your life where you could take some action,
right?
And probably keep yourself from experiencing some bad stuff later on.
Really improve the next 40 years.
Right.
Make it to 100.
Yep. And
play with your grandkids and go on hikes and do all those fun things.
Because whether it's being more active or cleaning up their diet or kind of doing all the things they may or may not know they should be doing, but just keep putting off because of whatever reasons they're justifying in their head, whether they don't have time, they can't afford it. And I always go back to this, you either slow down and make the time now, or unfortunately it's probably going to happen later on in ways that you didn't want it to.
Right. Way worse ways. And you see that a lot. Yep. That's what made us start our business.
And if you asked probably all those people that's dealing with issues, if they could turn back time,
they all would say, yeah, I wish I would have dealt with this before.
Sooner. Yep. Well, I appreciate you being on.
Love
Lindsey.
it.
And
anytime.
Thank you for taking
Good
time out of your
combo.
day. Yeah, for sure. And I know you say super busy, and for you to take the time to be here, it means a lot.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
All right. Well,
Enjoyed it.
thank you guys. And like always, if you enjoyed the show, please leave us a review, and we'll catch y'all next time.